The flames of Mustafar still roared behind him when Obi-Wan Kenobi stopped, feeling the weight of the choice he had just made. He had won the duel, cut off Anakin's legs, left him to burn at the edge of the lava as he writhed in pain, but his heart shattered at the sight. The words of hatred spoken by his former apprentice echoed in his mind, but something stronger remained. The bond between them, forged through years of brotherhood. Obi-Wan hesitated, but when he heard the muffled groans of Anakin trying to crawl, he turned around. He ran to him, engulfed in flames and agony, and pulled him with the Force, ignoring the smell of charred flesh and the horror in the eyes of the one who had once been the Chosen One. Obi-Wan carried Anakin to his ship after doing the same with Padme. The mutilated body of the young Jedi lay between life and death, and Obi-Wan saw that, even with medical care on Polis Massa, there would not be enough time. Then, guided by an impulse of the Force, he knelt beside Anakin, placed his hands on his chest, and began to channel his own life energy. The technique was ancient, dangerous, and nearly forgotten, but in that moment, Obi-Wan was willing to sacrifice everything to preserve the spark of light he still felt in his former Padawan. Anakin, between spasms of pain, felt a strange serenity emerge. The agony diminished, his eyelids twitched, and with difficulty, he saw his master, not as an enemy, but as a savior. Meanwhile, Darth Sidious's ship tore through the scarlet skies of Mustafar. The Dark Lord could feel Anakin's presence, but something was wrong. When he reached the devastated ground, there was no sign of the body, only a trail of energy moving away. Sidious narrowed his yellow eyes and turned to the sky, spotting a small ship vanishing on the horizon. He felt Anakin's presence aboard. In a rage, he began the pursuit. Obi-Wan noticed and pushed the ship to its limits, knowing he could not face the Emperor with Anakin so vulnerable. But worst of all, the Master had given too much of his energy and was exhausted. Nonetheless, Palpatine was relentless. Blasts struck the hull, forcing an inevitable confrontation between Master and Demon. The duel aboard the ship mid-flight was brutal. Mustafar's sky became a battlefield once again. The ships chased one another, and the Jedi could not escape orbit due to the relentless pursuit. Obi-Wan fought with the energy he had left, but he was at a deep disadvantage. At the climax of the battle, the ship was struck by the Chancellor and plummeted onto the hot rocks, nearly falling into the lava sea. Miraculously, it did not explode into fragments. Palpatine climbed the wreckage and assumed both Jedi were dead, but that the woman lived. He escaped with Padme unconscious. However, Anakin semi-conscious saw the scene. Anakin saw the moment he was abandoned by the Chancellor, as if he were no longer useful. Every inch of his body screamed in protest, but he stretched out his hand, and with the Force, saved Obi-Wan from being swallowed by the rising lava seeping into the cracks of the fallen ship. The gesture was small, but powerful. Anakin, even wounded, understood in that instant the nature of betrayal. Sidious had promised everything, and at the moment of defeat, discarded him like garbage. Padme, pregnant, had been taken, and his children would be shaped as weapons of the dark side. Amid searing pain and exhaustion, Anakin crawled to the ship's console and sent a distress signal with coordinates. At the exact moment the fragmented ship began to slide toward its final fall, Yoda and Bail Organa arrived, guided by the call. With urgency, they pulled the unconscious bodies of the two Jedi and took them to the secret outpost of Tempest. The refuge, built during the High Republic, housed cutting-edge medical technology and lost protocols. For days, the machines worked non-stop. Surgeries, grafts, back-to-baths, and internal repairs were performed. Anakin received strong mechanical legs. Obi-Wan, in turn, had no deep injuries, but his life energy was greatly diminished. When Anakin woke up, he was unrecognizable. Upon opening his eyes, Anakin asked about Padme, but then remembered his last vision where Palpatine kidnapped her. Obi-Wan said nothing. It was Yoda, who, with sorrow, informed him that her whereabouts were unknown. Anakin's silence turned into fury. The anger rekindled for a brief moment, but this time, there was no desire for destruction, only guilt and regret. He turned to Obi-Wan and said with difficulty, "You stopped me from falling, even after everything, and he abandoned me, as if I were nothing." Obi-Wan, still pale, replied with the same frankness of a master speaking to a brother. "You were my brother, Anakin. You still are. I couldn't let you die, not after all we've been through." But now, we must accept our scars and use them as lessons. Anakin lowered his head. If she's alive, I'll find her. I swear by the Force, I'll destroy the dark side. They remained silent for a few seconds, and in that space between words, something reconnected. With no clear leads, and with the Empire hunting down any surviving Jedi, Yoda decreed that both should vanish. The old master took them to Dagobah, a planet where the presence of the Force intertwined with the cycles of nature. The dense air of Dagobah carried more than moisture and the scent of moss. There was the weight of the past and the promise of an uncertain future. Among twisted roots and murky waters, Anakin and Obi-Wan trained with fierce discipline. His new mechanical legs, now part of his body, limited some movements but heightened his focus. Yoda watched from afar, and when he intervened, it was with tasks that challenged mind and spirit. One morning, he forced Anakin to balance a stone the size of a speeder while reciting Jedi precepts with eyes closed. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, ran with a log strapped to his back and a block floating above his head. The slightest lapse, and both fell into the mud. The trials were not physical alone. Yoda plunged them into deep visions, using the Force to guide them through their own memories. In one session, Anakin was forced to relive the moment he choked Padme on the Red Planet and had to resist the impulse to destroy himself. Obi-Wan, in turn, saw himself facing Satine, the dead Duchess, asking why he had never had the courage to stay with her. During these sessions, screams often mingled with the sound of the rain. But there was progress too. They laughed together, as in the days of war, and created new forms of combat, synchronizing their lightsabers in almost dance-like circular movements. During the isolation, beyond Yoda's training and challenges, Anakin and Obi-Wan rediscovered something deeper than technique. They reconnected their souls. Time and pain had worn down their pride. The long walks through the swamps, the dawn meditations under the faint light of the local moon, all served to rekindle the lost trust. Obi-Wan wrote records of Yoda's sayings and the dreams he shared with Qui-Gon. And gradually, through exercises, confessions, and silences, the two came to see each other as brothers once more. A year passed until they finally received news of Padme, and the two were ready. Anakin and Obi-Wan left with a meticulously planned mission. Using an abandoned freighter from the Clone Wars, painted in neutral colors, they disguised themselves as merchants from Kashyyyk. The ship's transponder, still valid, allowed them to pass through Imperial checkpoints near Coruscant. Upon landing, they assumed false identities and, guided by forgotten underground tunnels beneath the capital, managed to approach the Imperial Palace. The plan included sabotaging the Central Tower's electrical system, creating an opening to breach the gates. When the outage occurred, 100 stormtroopers awaited them. The battle was swift and brutal. Obi-Wan used the architecture's verticality, leaping between columns and taking down dozens of soldiers with precise strikes. Anakin, with his adapted legs and restored mastery of the Force, crushed lines with devastating charges. Clones appeared with pulse cannons, but were defeated with a combined attack. Anakin created a vortex with the Force, and Obi-Wan channeled an explosive push, hurling the enemies against the palace wall. Then came the elite clones, survivors trained by special commandos, but none withstood the calculated fury of the two former Jedi Masters. At last, before the elevated throne of black marble, Palpatine awaited them. At his side, Padme, visibly weak, held the twins wrapped in cloaks. The Emperor greeted them with scorn, revealing his plan. Anakin and Obi-Wan would be killed there and then, and the children raised to take their father's place as lords of the dark side. The provocation was the final spark. The Jedi advanced. Palpatine drew 2 curved sabers and conjured lightning in alternating waves. The battle was the fiercest they had ever faced. Anakin felt the weight of the past with every blow. Obi-Wan dodged the lightning like a living shadow. Amid the battle, Palpatine unleashed a bolt of energy that collapsed part of the structure, revealing the throne's subterranean level, where ancient waste processing machinery still operated. When he realized he could not win, the Sith channeled Force energy to activate a massive destruction device hidden beneath the throne. But before the explosion took shape, Anakin pushed him with all his strength. In a desperate and furious move, he grabbed him with both metal hands and hurled him directly into the industrial grinder. Palpatine screamed, not from pain, but from humiliation, His body was slowly crushed, while his essence shattered in the Force. Anakin ran to Padme and the children. She, weak, still managed to smile. Obi-Wan helped them out of the palace as the structures collapsed. Back on the ship, they set course for Alderaan, where Bail Organa had already prepared the Senate for the transition. The news of the Emperor's fall echoed like ancient hope reignited. In time, Padme was elected Chancellor of the New Republic. Strong and resolute, she led an era of reconstruction. Luke and Leia grew up protected, but trained in the Force under the guidance of Yoda and Obi-Wan. Anakin, in turn, was not forgotten by the courts. He accepted responsibility for the short time he bore the title of Darth Vader and was sentenced to serve the Republic, helping to track down remnants of the Empire and rebuild destroyed worlds. His redemption did not erase the past, but the present now stood as proof of change. Obi-Wan remained at Anakin's side, not as a jailer, but as a brother. Together they visited devastated planets, helped restore ancient temples, and found Force-sensitive youths. In silence, many began to call them the last guardians of light. Yoda, before departing for good, said one last thing to Anakin. "Choices, great burdens bring, but courage, in you I see." And so, the galaxy entered a new cycle, not of perfection, but of hope. The Force, at last, began to find balance.